As China ramps up its political warfare against Taiwan, is it doing the same against the Philippines? With a video emerging of pro-CCP propagandist Victor Gao falsely asserting the 2016 arbitral ruling was invalid because China did not, quote, consent to arbitration.
I also say this as a Chinese national. I can bring you to court whether you agree it or not. But I will never be able to drag you into arbitration without your consent. Because arbitration without consent is a violation of rule of law.
This is the response by Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson Jay Tariala. China's claim that the award is invalid because it did not participate in the proceedings is baseless under UNCLOS, to which China is a party. Under Article 286, parties are obliged to settle disputes through peaceful means, including binding arbitration under Part 15. By ratifying UNCLOS in 1996, China accepted these compulsory procedures. Article 287 permits states to choose a forum, but in the absence of such a choice, arbitration under Annex 7 applies, a basis invoked by the Philippines in its 2013 notification. The tribunal confirmed jurisdiction over the Philippines' submissions, clarifying that China's objections did not bar it from ruling on maritime entitlements under UNCLOS. So, Renata, let me come to you first. I'll let you respond to this.
I'm kind of reluctant to respond to it because I'm not a lawyer, but I will just have to...
You're not a Yale-educated lawyer like Victor Gao.
Yes, of course, very intimidating. If you're an academic like me, which doesn't have a law degree, it's very intimidating to be confronted by a legal expert. But I would have to rely on two of my good friends in the Philippines who have basically answered this. Number one, of course, is Professor Jay Batong Bakal from the University of Philippines Law School, and of course, Associate Justice Antonio Carpio would basically said, China is basically, of course, the goal of China is to use law to undermine the July 12, 2016 arbitral tribunal ruling. That's been consistent, starting, of course, from their earlier statement when the ruling came out on July 12, 2016. It's just a piece of paper. Now they're basically saying, go back to the basic that you have, the notion of arbitration. But as mentioned in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, it provides, of course, for arbitration.
I mean, the way that China has built its case is because under international law, arbitration must happen with consent. Mm-hmm. But what is the difference in this case?
I think China is good at using, unilateral use the legal initiative to defend or protect their own interests. So I guess they will create some new arguments and claim that it's basically under international law.
There's a difference between just international law where consent is required for arbitration, but the point here is that they have signed up to UNCLOS.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. In a way, UNCLOS is unique. It's different, primarily because of the fact that it created certain new legal norms for example, of course, compulsory arbitration. So I've become a party of UNCLOS, given the fact that it's a very complicated situation that once, of course, you have the UNCLOS taking the effect that we'll have this exclusive economic zone, it will create a lot of disputes.
Yeah, because Professor Lee, I mean, it can't be so easy, isn't it, that if China, who is generally the perpetrator in maritime law and in this region, says, I don't want to be party to it, and then nobody can do anything under UNCLOS. Mm-hmm. So obviously there must be the provision where, in fact, they are still bound.
I think that once you sign the treaty, you have to be abided by what's said in treaty. So it's kind of very annoying if you don't abide by the treaty, and then who will trust you for your future behaviors.
Right. That's right. And we joked about, Renato, Victor Gao talking about his Yale degree and being an attorney at law. But those are very calculated, references, aren't they? Are they a way to mask what is essentially false, which is basically lawfare as opposed to law?
Yeah, of course. Just like what happened, of course, regarding Taiwan. Again, I'm not a legal expert, but I can only basically rely on my knowledge regarding when, of course, they took the seat at the United Nations Security Council. that resolution, I believe that UN resolution, General Assembly resolution, does not remove Taiwan from the United Nations itself. But again, this is the usual Chinese narrative. So you have to always take it with a grain of salt.
Right. Now, the UK frigate HMS Richmond visited Manila last month, delivering a letter that could result in the presence of British troops in the South China Sea. The letter conveyed the interest of the UK Defence Secretary in negotiating a visiting forces agreement with the Philippines. In addition, a US Ohio-class nuclear ballistic missile submarine carrying 154 Tomahawks made a rare port call at Subic Bay. And days later, a different Ohio-class submarine tested a Trident D5 missile off the coast of Florida, validating the US's nuclear deterrence. So what message are these powers, the US and the UK, trying to send?
I think, of course, first we understand it must be related to the upholding the freedom of navigation, right? But more importantly, I think this is also US new policy. They wanted to have this so-called government plan of change. So they want to have a strong military presence in Indo-Pacific region. And this time they visit to Manila, but they continue their trip to Ho Chi Minh City, right? So, and actually the original is from Korea as well. So it's kind of a part of their plan to have this journey around the maritime zone here. So I think this is very important, and also reflect they are going to increase their defense budget by 2027. I mean, for UK and the Philippines. I guess it's talking about the weapon manufacturing and the weapon industries, defense industries as well.
Right, yeah. So cooperating on the defense industrial base is very significant right now. Renato, I want to ask you about the, which was a little bit later, but the testing of that Trident D5 missile. Do you think that there was a coincidence there, or was there meant to be, you know, the conjunction of the Ohio submarine in the Philippines together with the testing, the nuclear testing in a different location?
Well, when the United States Navy will order a nuclear attack submarines to surface, this is sending a signal. They usually will not order a ballistic missile submarine or attack submarines to surface if it's not necessary, if there's a sense of urgency. So this is what we call something unique. And I think the United States is sending a message. Both Russia and China, I think it's because of during the United Nations General Assembly, I think the United States under President Donald Trump noticed the fact that now the two nations, Russia and China, are not anymore aligning, they're already aligned. So in a way, it's a recognition of the fact that the United States and its allies are confronted by a Eurasian alignment. I won't still use the term alliance because there's no alliance, but an alignment.
Right.
So you have the surfacing of two U.S. ballistic missile attack submarines in the Pacific going to Subic Bay, which is, of course, a traditional U.S. ally, and, of course, another one firing Trident missiles.
So, Professor Lee, this strategic signaling that Renato mentioned from the U.S., is it a very welcome signal to this region, assuring allies of that extended deterrence?
Of course, there are some risks, right? As we know, we all are the scholars in international relations. We understand the security dilemma, right? So once you increase your military capability, the other power will increase their military in return, right? Capability in return. So that will not necessarily make you more secure. But if this is one part of deterrence strategy, you have to do that. So I really think that probably for the long-term security environment building or landscape building, we need to kind of have another mechanisms like to balance a little bit. But I don't know where the mechanism will become. But of course there are some risks. But it needs to be well managed. Yeah.
But in terms of in some of the media reports, sort of casting doubt on Donald Trump's administration's willingness to counter China. None of this has been substantiated. In this region, perhaps shifting to the US. Is this a very welcome development which has kind of put those doubts to rest?
But I think that's the other thing. On my way here, I also thought about this, right? So whether this is a good thing or bad, it also depends on how long will this continue. Okay, once U.S. and China, they have kind of improved their relations, probably everything will go back to another path. So whether UK or other, for instance, Canada or Australia, they also have the patrol, right? Especially across the Taiwan Strait. So whether that will continue all depends on the relations between China and U.S. So. Remain to be seen.
Okay, watch this space. Renato, the UK Visiting Services Agreement, the way the Daily Telegraph, the UK paper, put it was that there would be troops stationed in the South China Sea. That's not quite true, is it? They're not stationed. There's the presence of them, potentially.
Now, the Philippines and the United Kingdom have started negotiating for a reciprocal access or a status of forces agreement. Similar to what the Philippines has, of course, first with the United States, the Visiting Force Agreement. Then we have, of course, the Status of Forces Agreement with Australia. Then, of course, the one that took effect last month was a Reciprocal Access Agreement with Japan. So we're negotiating that, of course, with the United Kingdom. This is kind of unprecedented because you're talking about a NATO member state, which, of course, traditionally has been a historic sea power, now coming back to the region. And of course, you immediately see the reaction of China. China is basically accusing the Philippines of bringing NATO into the system. So in a way, it's Beijing that basically was able to read the tea leaves. So the fact that it's part of our strategy, given the fact that we don't have the military capability to face China. So we have to bring in the more, a case of the more the merrier. Of course, in the case if we will have a status of forces agreement with the UK, then we will have, of course, a security partnership with the UK. And of course, along with the UK, you don't have only NATO, you might even have AUKUS, south of Taiwan.
Very, very good point, yes. And that is why China is very concerned about this.
Yeah, you have to give them credit when being able to read the tea leaves.